At 10 a.m. on March 3, 1943, Major Ed Larner broke formation over the Bismarck Sea and dove his B-25 Mitchell bomber toward a Japanese transport ship at mast height. His wingman hesitated. Standard doctrine said medium bombers attacked from 12,000 feet. Larner was at 200 feet, descending. He keyed his radio and yelled, "Damn it! Get the hell off my wing and get your own boat." The 12 B-25s behind him were not standard bombers. Someone had ripped out the bombardier position, removed the belly turret, and stuffed 850 caliber machine guns into the nose. 4,000 rounds of ammunition pointed straight ahead. The brass at Wright Field had called this configuration impossible. The center of gravity was wrong. The plane was too nose-heavy. It would never fly properly. The pilot who designed it was a 43-year-old former airline manager whose wife and 4 children were starving in a Japanese prison camp 1,500 miles north. His name was Paul Irving Gunn. Everyone called him Pappy. And in the next 20 minutes, his impossible aircraft would help annihilate an entire Japanese convoy. The problem facing Allied air forces in early 1943 was simple mathematics. Conventional bombing could not sink ships. High-altitude attacks achieved hit rates below 1%. At the Battle of Midway, B-17 bombers dropping bombs from 25,000 feet scored 0 hits on Japanese carriers. Not one. The ships simply moved out of the way while bombs fell for 30 seconds. The solution was obvious. Fly lower. Attack at mast height. Skip bombs across the water like stones. But that solution created a new problem. Aircraft approaching at 200 feet flew directly into shipboard anti-aircraft fire. Japanese destroyers carried 25mm cannons that could tear through aluminum like paper. The approach took 8 to 10 seconds of flying in a straight line toward guns designed to kill you. In October 1942, B-17 bombers attempting skip bombing runs at Rabaul had to attack at night just to survive. Daylight runs were suicide. The bombers needed a way to suppress enemy fire during the approach. They needed to shoot back. But medium bombers weren't designed for strafing. The bombardier sat in the nose with a bomb sight, not machine guns. The defensive armament pointed sideways and backward. Nobody at Wright Field had a solution. Paul Gunn did. Gunn was born October 18, 1899, in Quitman, Arkansas. Son of a blacksmith, one of 6 children. He enlisted in the Navy at age 19 and spent 21 years as an enlisted aviator. He eventually became a flight instructor at Pensacola, training many future Navy aces. He flew from America's earliest aircraft carriers, the Langley, Lexington, and Saratoga. After retiring as a chief petty officer in December 1939, Gunn moved his family to the Philippines. He became general manager of Philippine Airlines, operating a fleet of red-painted Beech 18 aircraft between Manila and the outer islands. His wife Folly and their 4 children settled into colonial life in the Philippines. Comfortable, safe. Then Pearl Harbor happened. On Christmas Day, 1941, military command ordered Gunn to fly staff officers to Australia. Then they forbade him to return. He gave Polly a wad of cash and told her that if he were captured, she should tell the Japanese he was dead. On January 20, 1942, Japanese forces interned his wife and 4 children at Santo Tomas internment camp in Manila. They would spend 3 years there, near starvation, while Gunn fought his own private war against the empire that held them. His daughter Julie, despite spending months in a full-body cast from illness, became a courier for the anti-Japanese resistance. She smuggled contraband under her cast through checkpoints while guards searched other prisoners. General George Kenney, who commanded the 5th Air Force, later described Gunn's mindset in 2 words: personal vendetta. If you want to see how Gunn turned that vendetta into the most devastating anti-ship weapon in the Pacific, please hit the like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from dusty archives. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Gunn. In mid-1942, Gunn started modifying aircraft without permission. He began with a 20 Havoc attack bombers at Eagle Farm Airfield in Brisbane. He stripped out the bombardier position. Then he installed 4 50 caliber machine guns salvaged from wrecked P-40 fighters. Forward firing, fixed. Point the nose at the target and pull the trigger. The results were immediate. On September 12, 1942, Gunn's modified A-20 planes successfully raided the Japanese airfield at Buna. The strafing runs tore apart aircraft on the ground, grounded planes, fuel dumps, ammunition stores. General Kenny arrived in Australia that August. He discovered what Gunn was doing and immediately promoted him to Special Projects Officer with authority to continue. Kenny called him a gadgeteer par excellence. Now Kenny wanted Gunn to apply the same treatment to the B-25 Mitchell. Bigger aircraft, more guns, more bombs, more firepower. The modification was radical. Gunn removed the bombardier position entirely. He installed a metal plate where the glass nose had been. Through that plate protruded 4 50 caliber Browning machine guns, each with 500 rounds. Then he added 4 more guns in external pods, 2 on each side of the fuselage below the cockpit. 8 forward-firing machine guns, 4,000 rounds total. Enough firepower to suppress any ship's anti-aircraft batteries during a skip bombing approach. He removed the belly turret because it was useless at wave-top altitude. In its place, he hung an auxiliary fuel tank for extended range. The first prototype, a B-25C with serial number 4112437, was a disaster. The nose was so heavy with guns and ammunition that the aircraft could not fly. The center of gravity had shifted too far forward. The tail would not come up on takeoff. The plane wanted to nose over and cartwheel down the runway. Ground crews started calling it Pappy's Folly. Wright Field engineers sent formal objections. The modifications were impracticable. The balance was all wrong. The airplane was too heavy, and it would not fly properly. When Gunn reportedly received a telegram ordering the modified planes grounded as dangerous, he allegedly replied, "Put center of gravity in storage for the duration. We have a war to fight." Gunn solved the problem by moving the pod guns aft and relocating the fuselage fuel tank. Pilots had to hold the nose wheel on the runway until 120 miles per hour instead of the normal 80. Turns required 170 miles per hour instead of 120, unconventional, demanding, but flyable. By late February 1943, 12 B-25 strafers were combat-ready. The 90th Bombardment Squadron called them commerce destroyers. Then, Japanese intelligence handed Kenny the perfect target. American codebreakers intercepted messages revealing that a major convoy would attempt to reinforce Lae, New Guinea. 16 vessels, 8 destroyers, 8 transports, and nearly 7,000 troops of the 51st Division under Rear Admiral Masatomi Kimura. If those troops reached Lae, they would threaten Allied positions across Papua New Guinea, Henderson Field, and Port Moresby. Everything the Marines had bled for at Guadalcanal. Kenny assembled everything he had: 39 B-17 bombers, 41 B-25 bombers, 34 A-20 attack aircraft, and 154 fighters. The convoy was spotted on March 1st. B-17 bombers attacked from medium altitude on March 2nd. They achieved hit rates of approximately 7.5%. 1 transport was sunk, 2 were damaged. Inadequate. March 3rd was different. The coordinated attack began at 10 o'clock in the morning. B-17s bombed from 7,000 feet, drawing anti-aircraft fire upward. Australian Beaufighters approached at mast height, forcing ships to turn and present their broadsides. Then 12 B-25 strafers from the 90th Bombardment Squadron dropped to 200 feet and attacked. Major Larner's squadron dropped 37 bombs. They scored 17 direct hits. A 46% hit rate, compared to less than 1% from high altitude. Co-pilot Garrett Middlebrook later described the strafing runs. He watched Japanese soldiers on transport decks getting hit by 50 caliber fire. At first, he thought he was seeing wooden splinters flying through the air. Then he realized what he was actually watching. Those were not splinters. Those were human beings, hundreds of them, blown off the deck by 8 machine guns firing simultaneously. Within 20 minutes, General Kenny noted, the battle was over. Final results of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. All 8 transports were sunk. 4 destroyers were sunk. 4 destroyers were damaged. Approximately 2,890 Japanese troops were killed. Only about 1,200 reached Lae. Allied losses were 6 aircraft and 13 aircrew. A Japanese staff officer at Rabaul wrote afterward that not during the entire savage fighting at Guadalcanal did we suffer a single comparable blow. Vice Admiral Mikawa called it a fatal blow to the South Pacific. Destroyer Captain Tamichi Hara used one word: unbelievable. Japan never again attempted large convoy reinforcement to any location within Allied air power range. The commerce destroyers had changed the mathematics of the Pacific War. When General Kenny traveled to Washington and Wright Field engineers told him the modifications were impossible, he told them that 12 such aircraft had just devastated a Japanese convoy. 60 more were being modified in Australia. General Arnold reportedly ran them out of his office. Gunn was sent to the United States to share his designs with North American Aviation. The company incorporated his innovations into factory-built variants. The B-25G carried a 75mm cannon plus machine guns. The B-25H featured 14 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns, 8 5-inch rockets, and a 75mm cannon. The B-25J mounted up to 18 forward-firing machine guns, firepower equivalent to 3 P-51 Mustangs from a medium bomber. Pappy Gunn received the Distinguished Flying Cross twice, the Silver Star, the Legion of Merit, the Air Medal, and 9 Purple Hearts. 9. He was shot down twice. He took white phosphorus wounds at Tacloban in late 1944 that nearly killed him. He rose from captain to full colonel by war's end. His family survived Santo Tomas. All 4 children and his wife Folly were liberated in February 1945, skeletal but alive. Gunn returned to the Philippines after the war to rebuild Philippine Airlines. On October 11, 1957, he died the way he had lived his entire adult life, flying. His twin-engine Beechcraft crashed in a storm between Mindanao and Manila. He was 57 years old. General Kenny wrote The Saga of Pappy Gunn in 1959. Gunn's son Nathaniel published Pappy Gunn in 2004. The man who proved the engineers wrong never got to see the factories produce thousands of aircraft based on his impossible design. But the pilots who flew them knew whose work kept them alive. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive.